No one really knows what life has in store for us. Sometimes the most unexpected things happen to us, and it's just something we have to learn to live with. For the longest time, I've told myself that I don't want to do a job that involves law since my dad is a federal officer and my mom is a judge. And honestly, the last thing I ever wanted to be was a lawyer. But losing my uncle changed the way I view this profession. Hi, my name is Crystal, and this is my story. As I mentioned, the person who I lost was my uncle. Growing up, he was like a second dad to me since my dad would always be away at work. He became a big part of my life and he became a father figure to me. Not only was he a father figure, but he was my best friend. Losing him felt like a horrible nightmare that just didn't seem to end. However, losing my uncle made me lose myself. I ended up quitting volleyball and cross country, and I slowly grew depressed. It got to the point where I didn't see the point of doing anything anymore. I was angry with the world for letting this happen. The loss of his life, and he left his two innocent little kids behind, all because a guy was texting and driving. Getting through it and overcoming it was a really hard process because you never really get over it. Even though my mother was mourning the death of her brother, she would always seem to pull through no matter what. I grew a closer relationship with her as well with my friends who would try to get me out of the house and doing things again. In a way, the loss of my uncle made my whole family closer. It helped me understand to cherish the people in my life while they are still here. Somehow, this horrible thing that happened helped us realize that no matter how old, young, sick, or even healthy you may be, you just never really know what might happen. Now, you may be wondering how this influenced my decision to become an attorney. Well, as I mentioned earlier, the reason my uncle lost his life was to a reckless driver who was texting and driving. The person cost my uncle's life and nothing happened to him. This made me very furious, but it also made me feel really guilty since nothing happened to him and I wanted something to happen to him. This this man's company decided it was best if this incident went to court. And that's exactly what happened. My family ended up getting a legal practitioner, and when I sat down to talk to her, she changed my life and the view I have for the lawyers. For the longest time, I saw being an attorney as such a boring profession, especially since it involved law. Personally, I really wanted nothing to do with this occupation, but she changed the way I view it. Maybe not all attorneys are like her, but she shared a very personal story about her losing her dad in a car crash as well. She told me, no money and no persons will bring them back, but you could always do something for them and make them proud. These words stuck with me because my uncle always encouraged me to go the extra mile. Now I am halfway done with my college degree thanks to dual credit courses, and now I just need 3 years of law school. Even though losing a loved one can turn your whole world upside down, losing a very important person in my life helped me decide what I want to do with my life. That's it.
Oh, if I had glitter, I would toss it up and let it sprinkle down. That was fantastic. Miss
Thank
Amanda,
you.
the floor is
Yeah,
yours.
awesome. So yeah, really, really nice job. Really nice job. I felt that it was very personal, but there were a couple things that stood out to me. One of those things that stood out, I wrote down imminence of now while you were talking. And I wrote that because you identified in your piece in a very, very small window of time how important the impact of now is. And so you were talking about family and those bonds that were created closer through tragedy. So that was interesting. And I found that you pieced that in very, very well. The other part was you were inspired through the tragedy. So that signifies resilience, right? That you did that. You were speaking clearly. The pace was good. There weren't a lot of ums. Like I noticed, like even Kenny is talking about, you guys are really working on that. Clearly there are instances I need to be working at too. I don't work on that all the time. But it is important when you're public speaking, right? To speak clearly, to be able to articulate your words and without all the ums, right? That pause is so important to do. So that was good. I saw the impact that it had on you. That was super clear, right? From tragedy to not wanting anything to do with the profession to now you're like hooah about the idea. So that's great. And you're driving ahead, and it all showed in your piece. So the advice that I would give, the only thing that I would really give as far as advice would go would be to kind of start working on, like we did here, a little bit of like the page flip and stuff in there. So trying to get to a point where you're able to really know your order, your flow, and rehearse. I'm sure you guys have been doing that now probably for weeks. Yes, Kenny?
Actually, this is the first time that the second time they're doing it for presentation. So they just did this story within a month.
Sweet. So then I'm pretty blown away, because you guys haven't been doing a lot of that. So good job.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Crystal, first of all, you extended your story by 1.5 minutes compared to last time, because your pace was fabulous. It was amazing. You knew exactly where you wanted to have the emphasis, where you wanted to, your body language and your vocal variety with your pace really was a good blend. I did want to highlight something to work on, and that's you're reading everything as if it's a statement, which is great, but there are questions you're asking in there that don't sound like questions. And you, or it's in a part where you're saying, you may be wondering, that tone sounds the same way as everything else, whereas you would want your inflection to say, now you may be wondering. That little bit of inflection adds so much to what you're saying, because now you're engaged more with the story. You're engaged more with what you're saying. So don't rob your story by just reading it. And to that, I must give you credit. Your eye contact, there was times where I can see where you started and it was right where the camera is, so you worked on your perspective, but then you started getting down the page, but you made a conscious effort to look back at us, which is great, because in a person that's a professional, they're a politician, or in your case, you're going to be a lawyer, you have to get used to being able to read and look down and keep a good flow while you're doing that. So that was very well done on your part. And then, like I said, and your body language was very natural. It wasn't distracting. I know a couple of times you were moving your hair, but if I was watching you walk up and down the stage, it would be a natural movement, but you weren't nervous. So again, you know what you're saying. You have confidence in it. Kudos to you on that one. Small little touch points on that one. And also, your story evolved. Everybody pay attention to how her story evolved, because before, in the beginning, she would only say lawyers. But then she's like, my dad's a federal officer, my mom's a judge. And I was like, hold on. You never said that before. You know?
It's because I would say law, but I never corrected you.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, my dad does. Yeah.
And that is a perfect example of how your story, one story can change, and it adds that much more to it. So what you're saying now, guys, this one thing, you master this one thing, and it will evolve with you every time you have a new experience. You add to it. So you think about that. Amanda, what were you going to say?
The only thing I was going to add to what you were saying, Kenny, and then I had one other thing to add for the end of it. But the piece that I was going to add was that it created depth, right, to your story. So when you're saying just law, my parents did law. Okay. But now you're giving us more of a frame of reference, right? So now we can look at it and go, oh, wow. So there's a big family history here. So a lot of times we can see more into it with that. The only content portion that I wanted to include at the very end, you said that's the end, right? So working on developing your story, your ending is the last thing that we have to take away from what you've told us, right? So you want to kind of take what you've spoken about and give it a little bow, put a bow on it at the end there. The way that you either like the thesis or the main point of what you're trying to say, Even the overarching theme maybe would be another option. It'd be totally up to you kind of how you end that, but you definitely want to not end it with that's the end.
Okay.
Actually, Nicholas did a great job of taking his beginning. Remember what I said? If you can't find an ending, just take your beginning and throw it at the end of it. Make your story a full circle, you know,
Yeah.
and that you don't have to think of anything new. But
I mean, even something as simple as, you know, so through tragedy, I've found a profession where I'm going to be able to help other people,
I like that.
you know?
Might have to steal that one. But I also wanted to say too that, and now it adds so much more when I hear it because I've heard it about 4 times. Was it your mother's brother that passed?
Yes.
So your brother, your uncle, whose sister was a judge, was hit in a car accident, killed. So the impact of that coming from such a high public figure, you're like, for me, that makes me, now my brain works. Like the backstory that must have happened for you to all of a sudden say, with all this going on, like it adds weight to your story, you know, just a little bit of detail, you know. So you're sitting on a gem. Okay, so we're 2 for 2 so far, which it's gonna be amazing. All right, your story is a great example of how it can evolve. All right. Thank you very much. Round of
Thank
applause,
you.
everybody.